You've been lied to your entire life because the thing you trust most to survive might actually be the reason you wouldn't last a week. Water. It looks harmless, pure, safe, endless. But what if I told you that turning all the oceans into fresh water would quietly erase life on Earth? Sounds impossible. It isn't. And here's the part no one talks about. The oceans weren't always salty. Billions of years ago, Earth's first oceans were completely fresh. No salt, no sting, just endless drinkable water stretching across the planet. So what changed? Why did the oceans slowly transform into something we can't even drink? Every drop of rain carries a secret. As it falls, it pulls carbon dioxide from the air, turning slightly acidic. Not enough to harm you, but enough to slowly eat away at rock. And that's where it begins. Rain hits the ground. Rocks break down. Tiny amounts of minerals and salt get pulled into rivers. Rivers carry them to the ocean. Again, and again, and again, for 3.8 billion years. But here's the strange part. The ocean never gives that salt back. It just keeps collecting it, layer after layer, grain after grain. Until today, there's so much salt in the ocean that if you spread it across all land on Earth, it would bury continents under a 40-story wall. Let that sink in. Nearly all the water on Earth is undrinkable. So naturally, you'd think, what if we fixed that? What if we removed the salt? What if every ocean became fresh water again? It sounds like the ultimate solution. Unlimited water. No shortages. No thirst. But that's where everything starts to break. And not slowly. Instantly. At first, a freshwater ocean sounds like a miracle. No more water scarcity. No more droughts. No more limits. Drink as much as you want. Shower endlessly. Entire civilizations thriving without fear of running dry. But here's the strange part. Water isn't just something we use. It's something the planet depends on in very specific ways. And salt is at the center of it. Right now, over 97% of Earth's water is salt water. That feels like a flaw, like a mistake. But what if it's not? What if it's a requirement? Think about this. The ocean isn't empty. It's alive. Hundreds of thousands of species exist beneath the surface, and millions more we haven't even discovered yet. Every single one of them is built for salt. Their bodies depend on it. Their cells balance around it. Their survival is locked into it. So what happens if you suddenly remove all the salt? Everything collapses. Fish can't regulate their bodies. Their internal systems fail. They absorb too much water. They die. Entire ecosystems vanish in days. But that's not even the craziest part. Some creatures can survive both fresh and salt water, like salmon. So maybe a few species make it? Not really. Because the real backbone of the ocean isn't fish. It's something much smaller. Something you can't even see. And when that disappears, the consequences don't stay in the ocean. They come for you. Hidden beneath the surface is something that quietly controls life on Earth. Algae. Not impressive. Not powerful. Not even noticeable. But without it, you wouldn't be breathing right now. And this is where it gets weird. Algae produces nearly half of the oxygen on Earth. Half. Every second breath you take exists because of microscopic organisms floating in salt water. Remove the salt, and they die? Fast. Now imagine that. Half the planet's oxygen production gone. At the same time, carbon dioxide begins to rise. Plants on land can't compensate. The balance breaks. And that's when things start to spiral. The greenhouse effect intensifies. Heat gets trapped. Temperatures climb. But here's the twist. It doesn't get hot everywhere. It gets extreme. Because the ocean doesn't just store water. It moves heat. Ocean currents act like a global conveyor belt, redistributing warmth from the equator to colder regions. But those currents depend on one thing. Salt. Salt changes water density. It drives the sinking and rising of ocean layers. It powers the entire system. Take it away, and the engine shuts down. Warm water stops moving north. Cold water stops balancing the south. And suddenly, Earth splits into two worlds. Frozen extremes at the poles. Unbearable heat near the equator. But that's not even the breaking point. Because the weather turns violent. Without salt, the ocean becomes unstable. And when the ocean becomes unstable, so does the sky. Storm systems feed on temperature differences. They grow from imbalance. And now, the imbalance is everywhere. Hurricanes form faster, grow stronger, last longer. Entire coastlines become unlivable. But here's the strange part. It's not just storms. It's everything. Rain patterns collapse. Some regions never see rain again. Others flood endlessly. Seasons lose meaning. Agriculture fails. Crops die not because of one problem, but all of them at once. Too hot, too cold, too dry, too wet. And that's when the real collapse begins. Because food chains don't bend. They break. No algae means less oxygen. Fewer plants. Fewer herbivores. Fewer predators. Step by step, life disappears. And humans? We don't escape it. Supply chains fail. Water systems overload. Food becomes scarce. Mass starvation begins. And this is where it gets brutal. You wouldn't have time to adapt. You wouldn't have time to prepare. Within a short span, survival becomes nearly impossible. Not because of one disaster, but because everything fails at once. And that leads to one final question. How long would humanity actually last? Not long. That's the uncomfortable truth. You wouldn't need centuries, or even decades. The collapse would begin almost immediately. Oxygen levels drop. Climate destabilizes. Food systems fail. And survival becomes a race no one wins. You might freeze. You might overheat. You might survive a storm, only to starve days later. Because the systems you rely on were never designed for a freshwater planet. And here's the part that changes everything. We think salt makes water unusable. But in reality, salt is what makes Earth livable. It powers currents, stabilizes climate, sustains ecosystems, fuels oxygen production. Remove it, and the illusion of more water becomes the fastest way to lose everything. So the next time you look at the ocean and wonder why it's undrinkable, ask yourself this. What if the one thing stopping you from drinking it is the only thing keeping you alive? And if that's true, then what other limits we complain about are actually the reasons we still exist? Because sometimes the problem